My spouse is a forest ranger for the government. We've been married 3 years now. Yes, he's had a few bizarre lies and events during our relationship in the past, so admittedly my trust is pretty limited, but I'm constantly trying to work on myself. Anyway, my partner works at a coeducational ranger station. There are a handful of various females there, none of whom actually make me feel threatened or insecure. But there's one lady who is maybe 10 years our senior who just has to be partnered with my spouse all the time. This lady is married to a very quiet, rather boring-seeming guy. I've met him in passing in our town. My husband is not that way. He's charismatic, friendly, and very outgoing. So I can understand why women would find him attractive. But lately, things have gotten more and more concerning to me. So you tell me, am I crazy? Or is there reason to feel how I'm feeling lately? Every time my husband has a task to do, this lady always wants to partner with him. At first, I didn't mind it. I figured she's too old and married, so I have nothing to worry about. But then I noticed this lady started texting him a lot. I've read most of the messages, assuming he hasn't deleted anything. While the messages are appropriate, they seem really pointless to me, like attention-seeking, her asking him random questions about work after hours, questions that he doesn't really get to call the shots over. I started verbalizing my feelings and telling him how I feel. Her actions are kind of bothering me and inappropriate. Then it's gotten weirder. One instance, this lady partnered with him to go on an all-day trip to another forest town. I had a weird feeling about that day. I asked him if she was with him, and my spouse ignored my messages the entire day. I could see on our iPhone location app, though, that they went to lunch together. When I confronted him about it, he never admitted to lunch, but instead defensively told me she's just an old lady coworker and that sometimes he has to partner with her. More weird stuff happened. Not long after, this same lady started texting my husband about Jeeps and what's the best one to get. He has a Jeep. Again, I started to explain that this lady's behavior is weird to me and bothering me. Then the lady runs out and buys a Jeep for herself. On the day she got the Jeep with her husband, she drives it over an hour into the forest to show my husband and their coworker while they are out on a work task in the woods. So I'm seeing this work relationship growing, and I'm getting increasingly uncomfortable and annoyed. But every time I bring this issue up to my partner, you guessed it, I'm the crazy one, and I have issues. This lady is too old for him. This lady reminds him of his mom, etc., etc. All the staple gaslighting nonsense you would probably expect. And here's the most recent finale that I'm truly struggling with. Up until now, despite my better intuitions, I've tried my best to stay as understanding as humanly possible, but this recent event has left me seriously questioning this marriage and myself. The overnight work trip, yes, the final weekend forestry project before the season ends. My husband had to supposedly go overnight for 2 nights with coworkers to tackle a major trail cleanup project. He has done this before, and I was even allowed to go up and visit one of the nights, so I felt fairly relaxed about it at first. But then I noticed the text just coming in from this lady coworker. So I showed my hand to my spouse. I confronted my husband, asking if any women coworkers were going on this trip, and I explained that I don't find it very appropriate if they are. I also noted how I see our phone bill and noticed this one lady is just messaging away still. He assured me it's just another guy trip, so all I could do was believe him. He excitedly packed beer and God knows what else. It seemed and felt very different this time. I wasn't really part of his packing situation. I felt somewhat like he was hiding it from me, perhaps, but who knows. I asked several more times the week leading up to the trip if any women were going, and he repeatedly assured me no. He pressed me to trust him, etc. So I chose to believe him. Off he went on his trip. He made good on his word to call me when he had phone service. Even during our calls, I asked further if any women showed up, and that's when it changed. The first day, he mentioned that this lady coworker just came up to help for the day. While I was annoyed, I wasn't surprised. This lady, to me at this point, has to be involved in everything and will just show up. Nobody can control that, so I curbed my frustrations. But I noticed my spouse didn't send me any pictures. Nothing of his campsite. For context, he usually sends me loads of photos showing off his trip, so that was a red flag to me. Both nights he called me sounding tipsy. I know they were drinking up there, but to what extent I have no idea. I again asked if anyone was staying up there by chance. No, it's just me and the guys. He even went so far as to tell me all the guys' names. He returned from his trip, no photos to share with me, but his phone was going off still from this lady. A week had passed from the trip, and my partner's phone went off on a Sunday night at 9 p.m. Who would text him at this time in the evening? He was in the shower, and admittedly, I grabbed the phone and looked. It was this lady excitedly sharing a Google Drive link to all the photos she took on the trip. So I confronted him. I stared right through his soul and asked him if she went on this trip, to which he answered yes. It's hard to describe how the night went after that immediate moment. I was so blindingly angry. I felt like a fool for believing him. I refused to sleep next to him that night. I made him go to the couch. I ended up calling a girlfriend, just sobbing and shaking. My husband was the best textbook gaslighter. After he admitted this female coworker was in fact there all weekend, he was quick to go off on me for going through his phone. He proceeded to tell me that I have issues. I'm still at a loss. That comment left me only seeing straight red. Blinding rage. Here's the thing. I have no idea what actually happened on this trip. I don't know if there was any foul play or inappropriate behavior. I don't know the true magnitude of the situation, and that's why I'm really struggling. I know for a fact I will never get any or full truth at this point from my spouse. All I know is that I'm not over this event at all. It's been about 3 weeks now, and I'm still not sleeping well. I'm struggling to get over this because there has been no serious resolve to this. My husband lied to my face repeatedly about this work trip. He knew this lady was going from the beginning. His defense has been that he didn't want to have a fight with me before the trip, and he's stressed out the whole time when he's got work to do. I have explained that him lying to me and guilting me about questioning him has made me more suspicious because if it's really not a big deal, why would keeping it from me be worth it now? It gets better. He has had the nerve to literally be mad at me. Somehow, after finding all this out, he was mad at me. He told me that I need therapy and I stress him out. He explained that if a young, attractive female coworker ever joined his station, he'd have to quit a job he loves because of my insecurity. Am I crazy here? What is going on? This person has me seriously thinking I'm the problem. Am I the problem? You tell me, gang. I don't know if I can truly get past this. I don't want to enter his next season and get triggered and fly off the handle. I can't control my outbursts lately. We passed this coworker last week, and I literally physically reacted to just seeing her. I immediately picked a fight with my spouse over it, and I know this isn't a healthy way to deal with things. But the issue is, my spouse feels totally justified about lying to me. I feel like an idiot trusting him, and frankly, I don't trust him at all now. What would you do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Every spouse has a right to feel safe from infidelity. He failed repeatedly. Anyone committed to building a long-term relationship avoids even the appearance of inappropriate behavior and never places themselves in a situation where they basically say, I know how it looks, but you have to trust me. He treats you poorly because he sees you as too weak and desperate to divorce. Comment 2. For me, if my spouse acted this way, repeatedly lying over such a long time, I would be done. Life is too short to allow anyone to be so awful to a partner. No one does this unless there is something to hide. Without their ability to speak about it, I would be gone. Sorry for your situation. Spouses are supposed to be honest, loving, caring, and compassionate. He is none of the above. Now for the update. A few months have passed since the whole mess with the husband's trip and the coworker. Honestly, the last few months have been a crazy ride of avoidance. This guy has been avoiding the issue like it's a big problem. Every time I try to bring it up, he either changes the subject or just ignores me. It's like living with a ghost sometimes, a really guilty, sketchy ghost. Recently, he had the nerve to suggest we take a weekend trip to reconnect, saying it would help our marriage. I was like, seriously? This is the same guy who thinks reconnecting means dodging every question I have and pretending everything's fine. But I figured, why not? Let's see what this trip is all about. After a lot of back and forth, we decided to visit a cabin in the woods. It used to be our little getaway, a place where we could escape life and just be us. The drive there was mostly quiet. I mean, we talked a little about the weather and stuff, but there was this heavy silence hanging over us, like a thick fog. It was so awkward that I could practically hear crickets chirping in the background. When we finally arrived, the cabin felt nostalgic, but the tension was still there, like an uninvited guest that wouldn't leave. I tried to ignore it and focus on the memories, but it was hard. That evening, we decided to go for a walk in the woods. I thought it might ease the discomfort, get us talking about something other than the obvious issue. But while we were out, he got a text. I noticed him quickly hiding his phone, and my heart dropped. I didn't want to confront him right then and there, so I kept my mouth shut. That night, we sat by the fireplace, and he seemed so distracted. I asked about the text, and he brushed it off as work stuff. That's when I found it. A series of messages from the coworker on his phone, discussing plans for another trip. I mean, the messages were so detailed, talking about hotel reservations and saying, just the two of us. I confronted him right then and there when he returned. He denied everything, saying it was just work planning. I was so frustrated. I suggested we call the coworker for clarification. He hesitated, and I told him he should prove his innocence. So there we were, calling her together on speakerphone. She answered, sounding surprised but friendly, and he asked her about the trip. She hesitated before saying it was a group outing. I pressed her for details, and she mentioned a hotel reservation for the group. The look of relief on my husband's face was something else. The next day, we went out for breakfast at a diner nearby. While we were eating, I saw a familiar face at another table. It was the coworker, but she was with another man. They looked cozy, laughing, and sharing a meal. I couldn't help myself. I approached their table and introduced myself, trying to keep my tone light. She seemed caught off guard, but smiled and introduced her companion. I asked her about the trip, and she said it was work-related. But honestly, the vibe felt off, like she was lying through her teeth. Then she casually mentioned my husband's name, saying he was always busy with work. We finished breakfast, and I shared my observations with my husband later. He dismissed my concerns, claiming it was all in my head. At that moment, I realized I needed proof. I decided to start documenting everything. A week later, my husband received a delivery at home. It was a bouquet of flowers with a note. The note was signed by the coworker, saying she missed him and was looking forward to their next adventure. I confronted him again, and that's when he finally admitted the truth about their relationship. Thank you for reading. Edit: the coworker is now aware that I know about her feelings towards my husband. At first, she was unaware, but after I introduced myself, she recognized my name and seemed surprised. Am I the idiot for finally tossing the promise ring after my boyfriend threatened to break my finger for it? My boyfriend and I have been together for a little over a year. He got me a promise ring a few months into dating. I loved it. It's beautiful. I have never taken it off myself. I see it as a symbol of my commitment to our relationship. But every time we fight, my boyfriend will say he's done, ask for the ring back, or straight up rip it off my finger. I used to ask for it back after we made up after the arguments. But last night really doesn't sit well with me. We went to the store to pick up some last-minute things for our own little Thanksgiving dinner. We walk in, and I'm trying to look down the aisle in front of us to see if what we need is there. There are two guys standing by the aisle. As we walk past them, my boyfriend says, "Does that remind you of your ex?" with a grin on his face. I wanted to make sure I heard him correctly and asked what he said. He was walking ahead of me and said it again. I still didn't hear him, so he got mad and said he's not repeating my ex's name again. We shopped in mostly silence after that. When we got home, I put the groceries away and went into the living room with him. I realized now I should have chosen a better approach, as I started off with, "Why did you seem irritated?" which he said made me come off as accusatory and was why he reacted hostile towards my comment afterwards. He said he wasn't irritated. I said okay, went to get up, and he asked if something was wrong with me. I said, well, yes, I am irritated at what happened at the store. I thought he snapped because he kept bringing my ex up. He said he snapped because I wasn't hearing or listening to him. It turned into an argument, and I decided to go back to the kitchen and start on food. He said to not make him anything, so I said okay, I won't make anything as I wasn't hungry. He got up and told me to give him my ring, that he was done. I said no, I love the ring, and he came up and grabbed my hand and said he didn't want to have to break my finger taking it from me. I didn't fight him on it. I let him take it. We argued for about 2 more hours. I tried to tell him my perspective on it and why it bothered me. He just said I was attacking him and proceeded to attack me back. We did eventually calm down, talk it out, and make up. I realized that he unfriended me on Facebook, and he said he was being serious in the moment. It hurt my feelings a bit because we had just had a talk about engagement stuff the day prior, and how no matter what happens, we always work to be better for each other. But then this happens. I have not asked for the ring back this time. I honestly don't know if it's worth it, even though the ring to me held a lot of purpose. I'm not sure what to do at this point. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I would let him keep that ring. What's the promise in his mind? That he's going to use it as leverage every time you have an argument or disagreement? He's manipulative and emotionally immature. Comment 2. He picks fights, is bad at communicating, blames me, and threatens to break my fingers. It's okay now because we made up. Well, okay then, Missy. What advice exactly do you want? Now for the update. 2 days after the fight, I get a text from my boyfriend asking to meet up. Honestly, I was expecting a call or a text asking for me back, but nope. Just a simple ask to meet up. We agree to meet at this coffee shop where we used to hang out together when things were good. I got there first and was sitting at our usual table, just staring into space and thinking about how everything went bad so fast. He shows up, looking super pale or something, and he doesn't even make eye contact while ordering his drink. It's like he was trying to avoid seeing me. He hands me the promise ring, and all he says is he doesn't want it anymore. No explanation, nothing. Just like that. Then he comes up with this genius idea that he needs space to think about our relationship. Space? Really? I suggest we talk about what happened, but he just brushes off everything I say like I'm some kind of annoying fly. So there we were, sitting in silence, sipping our drinks, feeling like a bunch of idiots in a bad movie. He suddenly says he needs time alone and just ups and leaves me sitting there like a loser. I finish my drink, pay for it, and head back to my car. What else could I do, right? The next day, I get this invitation from my parents to come over for dinner. My family is great, but I've had enough of this relationship talk, and I just wanted a quiet evening. But of course, I can't say no to my parents, so I go. During dinner, my mom brings up my boyfriend and asks how things are going. I just brush it off like everything is fine, even though it's not. I mean, what else was I supposed to say? After dinner, my dad tries to lighten the mood with a joke about wedding plans, and I just laugh it off, feeling like a total fake. I decide to text my boyfriend about dinner, thinking maybe he'd respond or something, but he doesn't. Not a word. A whole week goes by, and I get nothing from him. I'm starting to feel really alone in this. Then, out of nowhere, I run into my boyfriend at the grocery store. He looks surprised to see me, and we exchange these awkward pleasantries. It's like we're two strangers passing by. He's distracted by his phone the whole time, and I try to start a conversation, but he cuts me off by saying he's busy. He mentions that he's been hanging out with friends more, and it just feels so dismissive. A few days later, I go to a friend's birthday party, and guess who's there? Yep, my boyfriend. He's laughing, joking, and having a good time with a group of friends, like nothing's wrong in his world. I try to approach him, but he brushes me off and introduces me to someone new. This new person is a girl from his friend group, and she's acting all flirty and friendly with him. I'm standing there, feeling like an outsider in my own relationship, and he keeps redirecting the conversation to his friends. The party ends, and he leaves without even saying goodbye to me. Just like that. A few days later, I hear from a mutual friend that he's been seeing someone else. I can't just sit back and take it, so I confront him via text. He admits he's been spending time with this new girl, but he says it's not serious. I'm sitting there feeling totally betrayed and hurt. We meet again to talk, and he says he wants to keep things casual with me while seeing this new girl. I argue that I deserve more than being some option for him, but he doesn't seem to care at all. So we part ways, and I make the decision to take the ring off. I leave it behind on his table, like a little piece of my dignity. The next day, I get a call from my sister asking about the situation. She can tell something's off and expresses concern over all of this. She suggests we take a family trip for some bonding, and I agree, hoping it will help me find some peace and distraction. We plan a weekend getaway, but deep down, I know this relationship is over. To answer a few questions, the promise ring was very meaningful to me. It symbolized our commitment and love. I never wanted to give it back, as it felt wrong to do so. However, I didn't fight him on it. The relationship has been tumultuous, with ups and downs, but this incident felt like the final straw. I wasn't aware of the new girl before our awkward encounter at the grocery store. My friends and family have been supportive throughout this. Am I the idiot for taking control of my life after my fiancé's empty promises and financial chaos left me stranded? I have been a stay-at-home dad for 3.5 years. We have 2 young children, 18 months and 3.5 years old. We are not married, but we are engaged, and the house is in her name. This all started when I moved across the country with my fiancée for a job at her uncle's company. She and her mother swore up and down that there would be a job for me when I got here. And while there was a job for her, there wasn't one for me. This wasn't entirely her fault, but I wish we had known more information before we moved. To take this job, I had to quit my job in Minnesota, which meant that when Infection 19 hit shortly after, I didn't qualify for any unemployment benefits or assistance. I burned through my savings. Since she still had a job, we decided I would stay home with the kids to save on expensive California childcare costs. Here's the problem. She works from home in our 1,300 square foot house with paper-thin walls. She takes meetings all day in the next room, which means I have to keep the kids quiet for most of the day. It's incredibly stressful and makes it almost impossible to do anything with them. When we made this arrangement, she promised to find a separate workspace outside the house, a she shed, a converted garage, anything. But 4 years later, that still hasn't happened. To make matters worse, she controls all the finances, refuses to involve me in decisions, and gives me no allowance. She makes a good salary, but she's not great with money, and she refuses to budget anything. She spends more than her income every month and then uses our tax return savings to pay back the debt, so we never have extra money for things like home improvements or family trips, even if just for the day. The house is literally starting to fall apart around us. I feel like I have no say in how our money is spent, even though I'm the one sacrificing my career and income for our family. She makes promises every month about budgeting, fixing things around the house, or letting me take over the finances, but it's all a smokescreen. On top of all this, I have a problem with my foot that makes it difficult to stand or walk for long periods. I need surgery, but it requires a 3 to 6 month recovery period, and my fiancé refuses to even discuss how we would manage with the kids while I recover. I've applied for disability twice and been denied both times, even though my doctors and their doctors agree that my condition significantly limits my ability to work a traditional job. I'm at my wit's end and feel completely trapped. How can I get her to understand how serious this is and work with me to find a solution? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't get the makes promises about turning the finances over to you part. She turns the finances over to you by giving you her bank passwords. It takes no time or effort at all. Sit her down tonight and say that it's time for her to give you access to the money. If not, that's financial abuse, and you will be reaching out to a domestic violence organization tomorrow. Then gray rock her until she gives you the access or outright refuses. Comment 2. She's financially harassing you. She promised you a job, gave you the opposite of that, then trapped you in a relationship where you have no say. Find a way to get out. Maybe look for employment back home where you were originally from. Now for the update. I'm a stay-at-home dad. My fiancé makes all the money decisions, and I'm left out. I was at my breaking point. Part 2. A couple weeks after my last post, my foot issue got way worse. Like I barely could care for the kids kind of worse. My fiancée had to step in and help a lot more, which she was not happy about. She planned a family dinner at her uncle's house for the weekend. I was just looking forward to a good meal and some adult conversation. We get there, and it's all the usual people. Her parents, her cousin, her uncle, We were all just chatting about random stuff. Then her uncle casually mentions my surgery. He asks how it will affect our finances. You could feel the tension. My fiancée quickly dismisses the topic, saying everything is under control. I can tell she feels pressured and caught off guard, and I'm sitting there like, is it though? The kids were being a little loud, which didn't help, but they were just being kids. After dinner, her cousin pulls me aside and asks if I'm doing okay since I've been kinda quiet. Now, this was not the time or place. My fiancée gets defensive and starts a snappy exchange with her cousin. It's all very uncomfortable. I decide to speak up. I say, look, I need help with the kids during my recovery. I can't do this all on my own. My fiancée cuts me off, telling me I'm overreacting and we'll figure it out later. I'm just done. I tell her I'm taking the kids home and she can stay and socialize. I leave, and as we were walking to the car, I overheard her laughing with her family about how I was just looking for attention. Real classy. I began researching ways to manage finances and home repairs without her knowing. I can't keep living like this. The following weekend, I went to a birthday party for my sister-in-law. It was nice to see family and be around adults. At the party, I talked to a friend and learned they had switched to a joint account for budgeting. I thought, hey, that might work for us too. I brought it up with my fiancée later that night. I said we should try a joint account for transparency. She exploded, saying I'm trying to control her finances. I tried explaining, but she just kept yelling. She stormed out of the room, saying she needed space. I was over it. I opened a separate account without telling her. A week later, I got a call from my foot surgeon's office about scheduling the surgery. I scheduled it for a date when I knew the kids would be with her. She found out about the surgery date and was furious I made decisions without her. She reveals she's taken out loans without telling me. I started gathering documents and bills to see the full financial picture. She accused me of snooping when I began looking through our accounts. We started fighting more about household responsibilities and parenting. A few days later, I decided to invite a financial advisor over for advice. She was shocked when the advisor arrived and accused me of undermining her authority. She left the house, saying she'd handle everything herself. I felt empowered. I took charge of the kids' schedules, planning activities to keep them busy so I could have some time to think. I started documenting everything, from bills to her spending habits. A month later, we were at a family holiday event, and I confronted her about her spending habits in front of her family. They were shocked. It led to a huge argument that drew everyone's attention. She stormed off. I decided to take matters into my own hands and secretly met with a divorce attorney. I learned about my rights, especially regarding custody and financial responsibilities. She noticed a change in me, but didn't ask any questions. I started to plan everything out. I wanted to reveal everything I had learned when the time was right. I wanted to be prepared for the fallout. Edit, I posted the update yesterday. Today, I got a message from her cousin asking if I could talk. We met at a coffee shop, and she opened up about my fiancé's family situation. Her family has always controlled her finances, and they're still doing it now. Her cousin believes my fiancé is scared of losing control. She also expressed concern about my fiancé's health, saying she hasn't been doing well lately. She urged me to be patient and understanding. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.